This video is sponsored by Wizards of the Coast. Check out the link in the description to get your pre-orders in for the new set, Wilds of Eldraine. We are finally heading back to the world of Eldraine after the Phyrexian invasion in the new set, Wilds of Eldraine. I'm really excited for this set. It's already starting to look pretty dang cool as preview season's starting to roll out. And I thought this would be a good time to talk about some of my favorite cards from the first time we were at the plane. But listen, I realize you probably remember the Great Henge. You probably remember Corvold, and I know you remember Oko. But no, in this video, I wanted to highlight some of the cards that I think you might have forgotten about. So without further ado, let's jump into some really sweet Eldraine cards. First card I want to mention today is Kenraths Transformation. For 1 and a green, it's an aura that says Enchant Creature. When Kenraths Transformation enters the battlefield, draw a card. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a green elk creature with base power and toughness 3/3. I'm having this at the beginning of the list because I do see this card sometimes, but I definitely think it should be played more. Oko's middle ability is Brutal, and this is that for 1 less mana and replaces itself. Kenraths Transformation and effects like it are especially effective on commanders. A lot of the time, if you destroy or exile a commander, your opponent can just choose to send it back to the command zone. With cards like Kenraths Transformation, they now have to kill the creature or get rid of the enchantment before they have the option to recast their commander. I don't think that Kenraths Transformation is the best green removal spell, but I think it's in the conversation for one of the best, especially for dealing with those pesky commanders, especially against green decks, which will just have the mana recast their commanders anyways. If you haven't given this card a try, maybe consider it. Next up on the list is another card that I think some people might remember. This is Ember Cleat. For 4 red, it's a legendary equipment with flash. It costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature you control. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has double strike and trample, and you can equip it for 3. Anyone who was playing standard at the time remembers this card being quite the powerhouse. You had to be careful with your blocking, especially if your opponent had any mana up, because especially the double strike that Embercleave grants can end the game right away. I don't really see this card getting much play in Commander. I've seen it maybe once or twice in some Voltron strategies, but outside of that, I don't see it much. I think most go-wide aggro decks should be giving this card a try, because if you just have 1 decent-sized creature, sometimes Embercleave is all you need to end a game. Next up, I have the Magic Mirror. 6 blue. Now yes, 9 mana is a lot, but I'm not done yet. Legendary artifact, it costs 1 less to cast for each instant and sorcery in your graveyard. You have no maximum hand size, and at the beginning of your upkeep, put a knowledge counter on the Magic Mirror, then draw a card for each knowledge counter on it. If you are playing a Spellslinger deck, this effectively is just better Phyrexian Arena. Those Spellslinger decks are going to have a lot of instants and sorceries that they're going to be able to chain together really quickly, fill up their graveyard quickly. The no maximum hand size is nice, especially because if it gets to stick around for a few turns, it's going to draw you a lot of cards. Now, it is pretty blue heavy, so probably only 1 or 2 color Spellslinger decks would risk running it. Now, it is a artifact that's taking up a slot in your Spellslinger deck when you'd rather be running a bunch more instants and sorceries, but again, if it gets to stick around, it's going to draw you a ton of cards. If you have a Spellslinger deck, I recommend giving this card a try. Next up is Wishclaw Talisman. For 1 and a black, it's an artifact that enters the battlefield with 3 wish counters on it. You can pay 1 and tap it to remove a wish counter from it, to search your library for a card to put into your hand, then shuffle your library. An opponent gains control of it, and you can only activate this ability during your turn. Now, obviously, this is risky. You're giving a unrestricted tutor to your opponents, but especially on the lower and more casual side of Commander, I find this card to be incredibly fun. And you can use it politically. Say there's a bad board state and a board wipe really needs to happen, but maybe you don't have a board wipe in your deck, or maybe you just want to bluff that you don't. Well, now you can give it to one of your other opponents for them to go tutor for a board wipe, and other fun situations like that. And then even on the higher end of the power scale, I find that this card is at least sometimes usable. If you are trying to assemble some kind of combo, you might be able to just activate this and then win on the spot before your opponents have any opportunity to utilize it. And especially because it's in the about $4 or $5 range, I'm kind of surprised I don't see it more often. If you're trying to have some funkier games of Commander, I recommend giving it a try. Next up is Stormfist Crusader. For black and a red, it's a 2/2 human knight with menace. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card and loses a life. Now, this is not a card that I recommend running in very many decks, but having card draw in Rakdos is sometimes pretty useful. A 2/2 with menace is not nothing, and again, it tends to be a little bit more political. I personally run this in my Kenrath the Returned King deck. It usually can get in for a few chips of damage, but it doesn't draw a lot of hate because it's drawing people cards, and 1 life specifically in Commander is basically nothing, so it tends to enable some really fun play patterns. Next time you're building a Rakdos deck, try putting this in for one of your card draw spells. Last on my list today, I want to talk about Realm Cloaked Giant. For 5 white, 7 mana total, it's a 7/7 giant with vigilance. Now that's not great, but it has an adventure called Cast Off for 3 white that says destroy all non-giant creatures. Now specifically in Commander, there are not a ton of giants getting play. A lot of the times, if you use that board wipe, you are going to be able to get rid of almost everything on the board, and then you will have access to a big creature either on that turn or the next turn, regardless of what's in your hand. So I tend to find it pretty flexible. Specifically, I think it's good in mono white decks that are creature oriented. Plus, you can't tell me that this showcase frame isn't one of the coolest frames you've ever seen, and I'm so glad they're bringing it back with Wilds of Eldraine. I'm really glad that they're bringing adventure back as a mechanic because I think it is very fun getting multiple uses out of your cards. I have a Umari the Collector deck, so it is only creatures in the deck, but I found that adventures are a pretty interesting and fun way to get around that deck building restriction. So if you're ever playing a white creature oriented deck, maybe give Realm Cloaked Giant a try as one of your board wipes. And if you'd like to see some adventures in action, make sure to be subscribed to the channel because we will be doing a Commander gameplay episode based around Wilds of Eldraine, and Preston will be playing an adventure Commander. Thanks again to Wizards of the Coast for sponsoring this video. If you would like to get your hands on some of these awesome new cards that are coming in Wilds of Eldraine, make sure to check out the link in the description to get your pre-orders in for the set. And if you'd like to support us and other awesome Magic the Gathering content creators, check out the hashtag MTG Ambassador. Until next time, friends, see you later.